Okay. Good evening, everybody. Today, Shaar is a bit different. I don't know if it's noticeable, but I had to be at a certain event, and I there was no way I was going to give up on the Shaar. On the one hand, on the other hand, I had to be here. So uh, I spoke to one of the learners in the Shaar, um, Baruch Silberg, who was very generous, and he lent me his car, which is in better shape than mine, and mine doesn't seal properly. His does. So I'm sitting somewhere in the parking lot in his car in a way that nobody, hopefully, you won't be distracted by the noises from outside. I can hear them, but I hope on the video you can't really hear them. So, anyways, big issue to my good friend Chavrusa, Baruch Silberg, who was kind and keen to give me his car so I could sit in the comfortable back seat and give the Shaar tonight. So, Be'ezras Hashem, it should work well. I hope everybody can hear me, and I hope everybody can see, kind of. I know the lights are not great, but Baruch Hashem. At least we're not giving up on the Kviyas, and it was very important that we don't miss any night, so Baruch Hashem. Just to remember what we did last week we spoke about the concepts of the different things a person has to have bitachon for, and what was said was like this. Number one, the Chovos Halevavos divides it between things for this world and for the next world. After we see this world and the next world, Chovos Halevavos divides things in this world that are for our physical needs, for our assets needs, and for our families. And then the next thing is that for the things of that we need for the next world, and things that we need in this world in order for the next world to be better for us, per se. And then we saw that there's the parts of Gemilus of Bitachon that we need for things that we can do by ourselves. There are parts that we can do with other people. We could only do with other people, and different mitzvahs. I'm not going to go through all of them again. And then in Olam Haba, for the next world, there are two things that we need siyata dishmaya for. The one thing we need siyata dishmaya for is that actually what we try to do properly actually works, and it works properly, and we are able to achieve what we're supposed to, and then get the schar for what we should. And the second thing is that even if we do everything proper right in this world, still no one guarantees, or it won't be enough. I mean, think of living 80 years, 100 years, and doing everything you can. It's still not compared to unlimited amount of years and forever that we get. So we still have bitachon in Hashem that He'll give us lots of chesed and lots of extra things in the next world. And then we went to for the list of things that we need to have bitachon in. And now what we're up to is the different kinds of bitachon that a person needs. And as it says, and the example we brought is sometimes the bitachon we need is in order to do what in order to do the right thing. And sometimes we know what the right thing is. We just need siyata dishmaya to make it happen. So, for instance, when a person does ishtadlus for parnasa, we also trust Hashem that it will be the right business, the right thing that we need to do. But the second thing is, when it comes to ruchnias, then we know what the right thing is. We don't have a question, did we choose the right mitzvah, the right way to manage? The only thing is making sure that we do keep the bitachon, that we do have siyata dishmaya to manage the right decisions, that we know that they are the right decisions. So let's start. I'm going to try. There's a lot of distractions, so try. Okay. I guess I have to have bitachon that I'll manage with the Shaar and manage to make it happen. So let's see like this. So the first thing he says like this. The first thing, a person needs to trust Hashem. And this is complete trusting of Hashem. This is something that we're not involved in what we need to do. Is all the physical needs that we have. A person needs to have his trust. Nobody decides when they'll be born. Nobody decides when they'll die. Nobody decides Uh, um, Therefore, we could learn from that that just like Hashem gives us life and takes life, He also decides how much we'll have in our life. It's interesting that we understand. Nobody comes and says, "Well, I worked very hard and then I was born." It's quite clear that a person is born when Hashem decides he'll be born, and he's brought to the world when he's born. And he's not born a minute early or a minute late. He's born when he's supposed to be born. Every person is born on the right time. Like we know that the famous saying that the day you were born is the day Hashem decided the world can't manage without you. And that's when we're born. And it's clear to us that Hashem decides that we'll come to this world. We could think that there's a lot of extras and the decisions that a married couple and they were together and that's why they got pregnant and that's why they had babies. But if you even in Derech HaTeva, if you look into medicines and what happens at the birth, that suddenly the oxygen starts going the other direction and things like this, it's clear that it's 100% Yad Hashem. When a person is his time to die, he dies. Yad Hashem. Same thing, how much a person will have in this world is what Hashem decides. Whether you have a little or a lot, he's going to live in a certain house. He's going to live what is going to be his clothes. And we see that. We see that many times people live in houses and in mansions, and they have clothes and things. They have stuff that they didn't think they'll be able to afford. It just happened to be. Especially us. You could see it, especially for people like us that came from Eretz Yisrael, right? You never imagine you live in a house that has more than 60 meters square, and then you come to South Africa and you have a garden that's bigger than the house in Israel. So Hashem decides. It doesn't have to be about finances. It doesn't have to be about the way it is. It's the way Hashem, whatever Hashem gives us. Same thing with the famous story with the Briskerov, whose daughter was once very nervous one time, and he asked her what's going on. And she said, "Parnasa, I'm worried." And he tells her, "What are you worried about?" She said, "Well, the currency is moving and changing, and the currency is falling apart, and what's going to be?" And he told her something very simple. He said, "It doesn't say anywhere that how much money a person will make is registered from beginning of the year to the end. From on Rosh Hashanah, it says how much you'll have to eat, how much you'll have to wear, your clothes. So if Hashem decides to give you a lot of money so you can buy food, or Hashem decides that you'll be invited to many simchas and you'll have amazing food, or if Hashem decides that your neighbor will send you the best mishlach manas, or whatever it is, it could be in any way. But it's mizaynoisav shel adam ktuvim lo Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah, and it's not necessarily how much you'll make for it. All right, so we have to understand that all these things is 100% in the hands of Hashem, and all our physical needs in the hands of Hashem. Yes, there are parts that we have to do our ishtadlus, but between our ishtadlus and parnasa and what we actually have, there's no connection. We could look around and see. We could look at what we have. The reality of what we make and the reality of what we have, we could see very clearly that it's not a direct connection. Everybody knows how he got it and what he got, but it's not a coincidence that it's not the same standard. As I once heard from a rich person who says, "If only I could afford to live how I live." Right? It's a famous saying, but really that's the reality of the world. Hashem gives us things, and we have that ability. And we have to understand that because everything is in Hashem's hands, and because everything is clear that it's not in our hands, it's clear that it comes from someplace else, then just like Hashem decides how much we'll have, He decides when we'll have it. We can't speed up the process by working hard. We can't change the reality. Yes, I know it sounds interesting because we look in Derech HaTeva, and we'll get to that, how it works. Because the person says, "What do you mean? I know that when I worked double shifts, I had more money. When I didn't work double shifts, I didn't have it. December is a problem. November is better. I know that." So how it fits in, we'll see soon. But the concept is clear. What Hashem decides we'll have, and when Hashem decides we'll have it, that's how it works. That's what we'll have. That's when we'll have, and that's the way it works. And just like, as we said, death and birth is in Hashem's hands, so parnasa, clothes, and also health, and what we have is everything in Hashem's hands. So what do we have to have bitachon in? So what do we have to have in bitachon? So one will say, so if that's the case, then I have to have bitachon that whatever I need, Hashem will give. That is a good point. However, says Halevavos is another thing. The question of what we need to trust Hashem is not about having the right thing. Is about Hashem knows what's best for us. As we said a few weeks ago in the Shaar, if you remember that there is a concept that somebody can be rich theoretically, but then Hashem knows that if he will have 1 cent more than he has, he will have extra time and he will destroy himself. It will affect his ruchnius. If he has not only extra time, or if he doesn't have that connection with Hashem because of that stress with Hashem, then it will affect him for the bad, right? So we see that not that we need to have bitachon in Hashem necessarily that He'll give us all our needs. There's another level of bitachon that, except for giving us all our needs, that He actually gives us what we need, and it's different because it's not. There's one thing trusting Hashem that He'll give us everything we want. That could be also very stressful because the person says, well, I trust Hashem, He'll give me everything I want. I trust Hashem, He'll give me everything I want. And maybe what you want is not best for you. But this darga of bitachon is not about hoping that Hashem will give us. It's actually about understanding that what we have is the best for us. And it's a bit of a different way of looking at bitachon. Chazal tell us that if somebody has bread in his bag, and he says, what am I going to eat tomorrow? Then he's considered Miktane Amona. He doesn't have emunah in Hashem, he doesn't trust. So the simple way people think that, what does it mean Miktane Amona? That's just like Hashem gave you today, He can give you tomorrow. That's one way. But if we look at a deeper way, it's silly. You think that you're set today because you have something in your bag. That is nonsense. And that's what Hashem says. If you think that you're worried about tomorrow because today you have and tomorrow you don't, you're missing the point. You don't even have today. Even today, even if we have the bread in our bag, who knows? How many times did we have lunch for the day and then we got so busy we didn't have time to eat? So Hashem decided you're not going to have lunch now. How many times did we have a situation that I don't know, it got ruined, it spilled, something went off, whatever it is. Or sometimes we left without food and worked out that we did have. So if somebody thinks, oh, what's going to be tomorrow because I have only for today, then he's missing the concept, because even today you're not certain. Because Hashem gives you everything you need today and everything you need and what's right for you. Having that bitachon is a very relaxing way of living, because as we said, you need to work, you need to get parnasa, you need to try to achieve, but that's as your side responsibility. It's not. It doesn't depend on how much you work if you'll have or you won't have. It's not because you work that you have, or because you don't work that you don't have. You got to work because you have. There's a chiyuv of ishtadlus. There's a responsibility that every person has, and you got to do it. But what you'll have, what you won't have, is from Hashem. And if until today we thought that our bitachon is to trust Hashem in the, that He will give us what we need, that just like He gave us today, He'll give us tomorrow. That is a level of bitachon, but there's a much more relevant way that we're looking at here, that a person needs to realize that what he actually has is what's best for him. What he actually has is what Hashem decided is the right thing for him, and it is the right thing for him. So you might as well enjoy it. If a person realizes that what he has is the best option, then he's never nervous, he's never worried, he's calm, because he has what he needs. He has what's the right thing for him. If you have what's the right thing for him, then you're calm, then you're relaxed, then you're not stressed, right? Therefore, a person, when he goes to work, he does his job to go to work, and Hashem gives him the amount of parnasa that he planned ahead of time that he'll get. Hashem gives him what he should be getting at the time that he should be getting. Hashem gives him whatever he needs. But it's not about because you went to work or less because it's two separate paths. You get what you need, what you deserve. So a person can say, so then I won't work. No, that doesn't work that way. Why? Because a person has an obligation to work. We have a chiyuv of doing ishtadlus. Baruch Hu says, go get a job, go do your parnasa, go do what you need to do. That's your chiyuv, right? Just like if a person will come and say to us, well, in reality, I know that I'm not going to live one day longer than what Hashem wants me to live. Not one day, not 1 minute longer than what Hashem wants me to live. At the same time, not only that I won't live 1 minute longer than what Hashem wants me to live, I won't live 1 minute less. So I don't need to eat, waste of time, waste of money. I'll just chill. And if Hashem wants me to live, I'll live without food. That doesn't work. Why? Because Hashem gave you a chiyuv to eat, and you need to. And if you don't fulfill your chiyuv, then you won't manage. A person says, I'm not going to go to the doctor. Why? If Hashem wants me to live, I'll live. If Hashem wants me not to live, I won't live. That's true. But you're breaking your obligation to look after yourself. You're breaking your obligation to do shtatus. You're breaking your obligation to look after yourself. There's a chiyuv. There's a chiyuv for a person to take care of his own personal needs. And if he doesn't do it, there's no way he could come back and say, well, listen, I can't do it, but Hashem will take care of it. No. However, if you can't, Hashem will take care of you. An amazing thing. There's one of the famous stories from, what's it called? Rabbi Galinsky. He was, for anybody here who's seen him, he physically was a very small man. He wasn't a strong man. He was fragile almost. When he was in Russia, he was caught by the Russian government, and for keeping Torah mitzvahs, and he was sent to Siberia. In Siberia, even healthy people, strong people, were dying from colds and pneumonias, and people were dying all over the place. And Rabbi Galinsky says that when he came to Siberia, on the way to Siberia, he says his davening on the way to Siberia was like this. It says that Hakol b'dei shomayim chutz mitzinim v'pachim. Everything is in the hands of Hashem, except for tzinim v'pachim. Basically, a person has to look after his own health, right? Just like we see right now. So he says, Rabbi Galinsky, that's normal. When I'm home, then I have to make sure I have clothes. I'm not freezing. He says, when I go out to the street, I need to make sure I wear a jacket. I'm not going to freeze. He says, but here in Siberia, I have no control over it. I'm sent here against my will. I'm staying here against my will. I'm living here against my will and going out to the snow without shoes, with shoes against my will. So already I have no bechira, and now it's up to you. Rabbi Galinsky said that day, that moment, he got to Siberia, and in the most amazing way, he said he never got a cold. Even all the years he was in Siberia, he never got a cold. He said people were dying around him. He didn't even get a cold because he asked Hashem, and he told him, I can't take responsibility over it. And the most amazing thing is that when he did get out, he finally got out of Siberia, and he took the train, a long story, and he got to England, and on the first day in England, he didn't even think of it, and he got a cold. He got a cold, and he got sick, which, can you imagine living all these years in Siberia, being fine, going on the train, getting to England, getting to London, and then getting sick, then getting a cold. Why? Very simple. Because he was a very fragile person physically. The moment it wasn't his responsibility, he was safe. The moment Hashem tells you it's your responsibility, then he wasn't. And he got a cold from something very simple. And we need to see that in a very clear way. That if a person takes responsibility when he can, then that's his obligation. But if you can't, you can't. And we need to understand that also for ourselves. If there's a situation that we can't work, we can't do what we need, then we could say, Hashem, we can't do it. So Hashem, please make sure we're set, and Hashem will. All right, but as long as the person does have the ability to work, a person does have the ability to manage, The person does have the ability to function, then he needs to. That's his obligation. And he can't say, well, since Hashem decided already what I'll have it for how long and how much, then I don't need it to look after it. Of course you do, right? You can't go in and he says somebody will take, I'll drink poison for dinner. Why? If Hashem wants me to die, I'll die. It doesn't work that way. And he's not only that. Again, here he says something very interesting. And here he says like this, and fascinating. He says like this: if a person, and this is something to amazing. He says like this: HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives us a warning, and he says we're warned not to damage ourselves, right? So a person needs to know, and this is the Habitachon we need to know. Yes, we'll only live and be healthy and have drinks and foods and whatever we need according to what Hashem decided. However, a person has an issur. You're not allowed to damage yourself. A person can't say, okay, I'll poison myself and I'll be fine. Why? He says, because if a person will poison himself, then he obviously will die. Why? Because the Torah says, and the Torah says that he's not allowed to take that obligation on himself. Sorry, he's not allowed to take that responsibility. He's not allowed to destroy himself. And I'm sorry again, the distractions here are unbelievable. He says, however, here there's two options, says the Halevavos. One option is that he really kills himself, and unfortunately it works and he dies. And then he has a din of a murderer, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him the ability to kill himself. Yes, that means that it was his time to die, but he becomes a murderer, right? We believe strongly that if somebody murders somebody else, the reason the person died is because that was his time from Shemayim to die. The Marmakas talks about it. However, the murderer, he went through a tremendous issur. And he goes through tremendous, it's a big issur for him. The same thing, right? Same thing exactly. If a person is in a situation that he murders himself, he kills himself, he's a chayav as a murderer. Yes, he'll die there because that's his time to die, but he is chayav. That's his chiyuv, that's his obligation. He says that's one option. The other option is that he will survive. And if he does survive, then he got a nace. And it's a issur not only that a person is not allowed to put himself in a position that he'll get a nace. If he does do it and he does get a nace, then he loses from his merits from the next world. He loses his schuyos. He loses a lot of good things he has. She said maybe it would work. Maybe a person does something that he shouldn't survive and he survives. We do see that sometimes a person does something very stupid and he survives. A person does something damaging and he survives. Okay? It takes away a lot of his merits. So Chazal tell us one of the two things. A person, if he doesn't look after himself in a healthy way, in a proper way, one or two could happen. Either he will really get damaged, and then, yes, it was his time to get damaged, but still, he will get punished as a murderer of his own life. He took his own life. He's a murderer, and that's one thing. I'm not going into the question of suicidal, which is a whole different question, halachically and poskim and different topic. However, that's one thing. Or he'll survive. If he survives, it will take away a lot of his merits, right? Chazal tell us that when a person gets a nace, there's a cost to it. There's a cost of his merits. There's a cost of his chovos. There's a cost, and that's also definitely something that's very problematic. So if a person decides to put Hashem to the test and says, well, if it's not my time, it's not my time, I could fast for 3 weeks or whatever it is, and he survives. It was a very heavy price on his ruchnius, a very heavy price on his life, on the way he managed. Right? So we see that either way, it's a issur and it's a horrible thing, and it's a very big risk for a person to do that and to do something against nature, against what he's supposed to. Okay? Okay, now here's the thing, which means he says one more thing before we continue to the next topic, and he says we have to look at it as um, if a servant goes to his master and he tells him, what must I do? And his master tells him, you need to secure a certain area. You need to monitor. You need to be in charge in a certain area. If he's not in charge, if he doesn't do it properly, then he's in risk, right? The same thing. We see that Shmuel Hanavi, when Shaul HaMelech tells the Kodesh Baruch Hu about Shaul HaMelech, how am I going to tell Shaul HaMelech that David is taking over? He's going to kill me. So what? The Navi says that it wasn't considered a chisaron and emuna. It wasn't like what Hashem tells you to go and you're telling you're scared. No, because Shmuel tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, my responsibility by Hashem is to look after myself. My responsibility is to make sure I'm safe, to make sure I'm healthy, to make sure I'm doing the right thing. So that's my shtadlus. So he tells Hashem, what am I going to do with Shaul? And it's not considered in any way that it's a problem, right? And it's interesting. Hashem doesn't tell him, what are you asking me? If we see the discussion over there, that Baruch tells Shmuel, go tell Shaul that it's time for David to take over. He says he's going to kill me. Hashem doesn't tell him, don't. What do you mean? I'll protect you. It's not a problem. Hashem says, no, good point. But take a sacrifice, take a korban, take a gift, give him a present, manage it, which means it's a real concern. It's a real responsibility. It's something a person does need to take responsibility over. And Hashem tells him, no, don't. Let go. Let go. And why let go? Because your obligation right now, your obligation is to look after yourself. But once I'm telling you, so I'm giving you a way to manage. Right? However, we see, and this is where the two differences of the story is. We see another story with Moshe Rabbeinu. When Moshe Rabbeinu, sorry about that, the lights went off. I think I need to turn this back on over here. Oh, here we go. So by Moshe Rabbeinu, it was maybe a good opportunity to say again thank you to Baruch. Thank you, Brett, for the car. My chavrusa Baruch Silberg, that I can only give the share here. If you would imagine, you can't imagine what chaos is going around the car here. So by sitting in this Ari Miklot and this safety, I'm able to give the share. So anyways, so we see that there's and we'll see there's two different stories that happened. One story was, as we said, with Shmuel and David and Shaul. The other story was with Moshe Rabbeinu. We all know the story. Moshe tells Moshe Rabbeinu, go to Mitzrayim, go to Paroi, that he should send the Jews out. What does Moshe Rabbeinu say? I kvad peh, kvad loshen, I can't talk properly. I have a stutter. I'm not clear speaker. I don't give good drushes. I can't do it. And then HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, what do you mean? Misam pelodom. Why? Why by Shaul, when Shmuel tells Shaul, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I can't go to Shaul, Hashem says, good point. This is how you'll protect yourself. And over here by David HaMelech, by Moshe Rabbeinu, he says, well, what do you mean? Misam pelodom, don't worry. It's Hashem tells him, I gave you people a mouth. I gave him how to talk. It will be fine. Very simple. Because by David HaMelech, by Shmuel, Shaul, and David, it was Shmuel's obligation to make sure he's safe. And if that's his obligation, then HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells him, you're right, good point. So bring a sacrifice, bring a present. But when we come to Moshe Rabbeinu, there's no chiyuv of ishtadlus here, of looking after himself physically. It wasn't a question. Moshe Rabbeinu doesn't come and say, I'm scared of Paro, he's going to kill me. He says he's not going to hear me because I'm not a good speaker. Not a good speaker. That's not a time. Hashem tells him, don't worry. Because who gives a person the ability to talk? Hashem. So if Hashem sent you, then he could manage and you could do it, right? A person can't see, can't hear, could hear, can talk, not talk. It's all from Hashem. So there's no risk. And then there's no question. Right? So we see that over there, that was just a person needs to look after himself, then it's the right thing. Okay. However, we need to know that a person is obligated to look at himself, but if he does go and if he does do, sometimes he will lose, and he will put himself in a certain sakana, he will lose out. And that's what we'll see. We'll have to go in deeper maybe next week into the whole concept of Shmuel and the whole concept of Shaul over there, that they were that Shmuel did was putting himself in a sakana, right? So we see here now. We see the same thing we had. If we look at Yaakov Avinu, exactly these parshas, Yaakov Avinu says, "Kotonti mikol hachasadim mikol haemet." Right? He goes to Lavan, and then he goes back to Esau, and he says, "Kotonti mikol hachasadim." I'm not big enough for all the chesed, all the things that I get from Hashem. Why? Because every nes has a price. Everything that he gets from Hashem is something. Therefore, a person has the obligation to not lose from his merits in order to put himself in sakot. So now let's go back to what we started. In the beginning, what we started, we compared the concept of life and death to parnasa, right? Just like Hashem decides when we'll be born, when we'll die, how healthy we'll be. He decides how much food we'll have, how much clothes we'll have. It's all decided by Hashem. So if that's the case, then could be. If a person decides not to do his ishtatus, if a person chooses and he says, really, I'm supposed to work hard. I have to go do my parnasa in the times that I want to, but I decide not to. By Hashem looking after him and giving him a pleasant life, even if it works, and it works sometimes, it's on the cost of his schuyas. It's this exact comparison, right? That a person has, it takes away from his schuyas, that a person will get, he will get the food, the parnasa, the clothes, everything, but it will come with a price, right? Because the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu made sure is that a person has to work. So the same thing, if Hashem gives us the ground, and he says, in order to have proper parnasa, you need a plow, you need a plant, you need to grow, you need to work. If you don't do it, and if you expect a nes and some seeds come from Shamayim or whatever, then you're not doing what you're supposed to. If you're not doing what you're supposed to, then there's a price to it. Same thing with parnasa. Person has an obligation to go look for parnasa. However, that is only our obligation. And a person needs to realize, I go to work because I have to go to work because that's what Hashem tells me. However, why am I going to have money in parnasa? Not because I went to work. I did my obligation, and Kadosh Baruch Hu will send me from His side. I did what I'm supposed to, and Kadosh Baruch Hu will send. But don't think in any way that because I went to work, then I'll have. We've seen many times that if a person did something that looked like will be very worth it financially, and it didn't work out, or the other way around, he did something that looked like it wasn't the clever idea, and it was amazing, right? So we see that everything that a person does, he gets because that's what Hashem decided. However, there is something that a person needs to appreciate, and a person needs to appreciate like this: if a person does go to work, and Baruch Hashem, his work works, and he has a nice parnasa, and he goes to work, and the clients are coming, and salary's been paid, and he lives comfortably. He does have an obligation to thank Hashem with all his heart, saying that, understanding that he actually got his parnasa through his hard work. Because once we understand, well, this topic will end. Once we understand that there's a complete separation between what we work and between what Hashem decides we'll get. So it doesn't have to be that we'll get money through work. The fact that Hashem gives us the ability to get our parnasa through going to work, it's a tremendous blessing. We know the concept of avodas perech is work that there's no worth, right? In Mitzrayim, one of the tortures the Jewish nation went through is that they worked very, very hard all day, and instead of enjoying the building, at the end of the day, the Egyptians came and destroyed it. So imagine working every day, and nothing's left out of your work. You have nothing. You work, and it's gone. As soon as you finish working, it's destroyed. That's what happens to a person that works for his parnasa, and Hashem gives him money from someplace else. It's a very hard feeling. The person goes to work every day. He's not doing well in business. He's not doing well on his job. It's extremely frustrating. So yes, he still has parnasa, but it's because gifts and friends and lottery, whatever it is that Hashem sends it, community. At the end of the day, it's a very horrible feeling. So a person needs to understand, yes, you go to work, you get from someplace else. But you need to thank Hashem, and it's a tremendous present that Hashem gave us that we actually get our money through work. Because it would have been a horrible feeling to go to work consistently and not make money at work. Just work, and nothing happens out of it. And enjoy all the time, and nothing, you're wasting your time. Hashem gives us a gift, and He says, you know what? Your parnasa will be blessed. It will be the way you get what you deserve. It will be the way you get from Hashem how you should be getting it. So in that way, a person could feel very comfortable. A person will feel, you know what? At the end of the day, I don't feel like I'm wasting my day. I don't feel like I'm wasting my time. I don't feel like I'm wasting everything I have. And if a person has that, and he has that power, that strength, then it's a special gift from Hashem. So once we realize that, and just understand, so we realize, number one, that everything we have gets from Hashem, we get from Hashem on its own path, for its own reason. We realize at the same time that we would get it anyways. But then there's a third thing to thank Hashem for. And the third thing to thank Hashem for is that actually we are blessed to get our parnasa through what we work. If a person works and he makes a parnasa out of it, it's a blessing. It's a blessing to feel that you're not wasting your time, that you're being productive, that you're imagining, that you're managing. Sorry, not imagining, also imagining, but managing, right? So if a person is managing, then a person needs to always thank Hashem. Otherwise, you would have to thank the person who gave you the parnasa. You would have to, if a person helps you, you have to thank him consistently. You have to have a karas hatov. So if Hashem made it that you'll get your money through your job and not through charity or help or whatever it is, then if it's that way, then thank Hashem at least. Now you don't need to thank somebody else. You have who to thank. You have who to pray to. You have who to realize the power of what you got. And when a person has that, then a person could be much more calm and realize that his success is another gift from Hashem. Not only what he has, that's one gift, but his success in work is a separate gift to his parnasa. And to understand that whenever somebody is managing financially, there are two gifts here. Gift number one is the fact that Hashem decided to give him, despite nothing to do with his hard work. Hashem decided to give him. The second thing is that Hashem decided to give him through his hard work. So he doesn't have to have that horrible feeling of wasting his time all day. He actually feels productive. He actually feels like he's managing. And that's a separate gift completely. Later on, next week, Be'ez Hashem, we'll see what happens when a person actually doesn't have that feeling of success in parnasa, and what does it mean, and changing jobs, etc. But in the meantime, these concepts, these are the two things. So if we look, the first thing we saw of parnasa and Habitachon is for our physical needs, and that is divided into two things we thank Hashem. Number one, for looking after us and giving us, and number two, for actually when we get it through the hard work we've done and achieved, then we don't feel like we waste our times. Yesher koach. I know I was not as comfortable and clear as usual, but his God, it was clear and productive, and thank you again, Baruch. Thank you. Amazing.
Shaar, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So Rabbi,
Yes.
Rabbi, if you're not earning, you can still daven to Hashem to get.